there's a very key moment that happened in the past several months, which is the Anti-Zionist Conference that took place in Vienna, the Jewish Anti-Zionist Congress. And I had a post at that time, approximately, if I'm not mistaken, 128 years after the first Zionist conference, we have a Jewish Anti-Zionist Conference taking place in Vienna. Tell us a little bit more about it. Who participated? What did you come up with? Why? And where is it going? I'm sure many people would love to know about that.
So the First Jewish Anti-Zionist Congress took place in Vienna in June of this year, just a couple of months ago. It was, first of all, I'm happy to say that it was a great success. Many people showed up over the course of 3 days of discussions and also practical discussions, not only theoretical. There were roughly 1,000 people showed up, and of people of all backgrounds. It wasn't an exclusive Congress, on the contrary. The name Jewish Anti-Zionist Congress, people assume that it is all about being Jewish or only for Jews. No, nothing like that. So let me explain. It was initiated by a group of obviously anti-Zionist Jews, people like myself. By the way, I don't identify as Jewish for normal life, but for that purpose, it is important. Why? Because the Zionist race state claims to speak on our behalf. So we have to stand up against that. Okay? The Zionist race state is the one who, by law, defines me as a privileged Israeli Jew. Not because I consider myself Israeli or Jewish, but by law, my legal status under Israeli apartheid is that I'm a privileged Israeli Jew. And any Jew born around the world, doesn't matter if they are affiliated or not affiliated with Judaism or with Zionism, is regarded as a potential citizen of the state under Israeli law. And the Zionist state claims to speak on their behalf, on our behalf. So it is important for us to gather and to stand up against that. Now, I actually initially tried to organize something similar 8 years ago to mark 120 years to the First Zionist Congress. And I was doing that with the ultra-Orthodox Jews in Mea Shearim, in Jerusalem, occupied Jerusalem, etc. Eventually, it didn't materialize. I'm very happy that the people in Vienna kind of raised the glove and came up with the idea. And obviously, I was happy to join, and we organized the Anti-Zionist Congress, the Jewish Anti-Zionist Congress. Now, it is not Jewish in the sense that it is discussing Judaism, and it is not exclusively for Jews. What it is about is us, those that the Zionist state claims to speak in our name, getting together along with our Palestinian partners and allies from around the world to have a clear front, or even a declaration of war, I would say, on Zionism. So it is our strength of getting together all those people who are Jewish or coming from Jewish background, etc., getting together and having a clear anti-Zionist statement, unequivocally anti-Zionist. Again, in an analogy to apartheid South Africa, it would be like a bunch of white folks who are anti-apartheid, dissidents, organizing an anti-apartheid conference, not only for them, primarily for actually, for the sake of the rights of those who are oppressed, the black folks under apartheid, etc. In our case, the Palestinians and our many allies from around the world, they all joined forces, and it was a great success. We are already working on the next Congress. I'm happy to say that even people said that this was a historic achievement, a historical moment, and I'm happy that that is the case, because this was the intention, basically, to create something that will help with that movement that is needed to abolish Zionism. And that movement exists, but it needs to kind of to galvanize and to kind of be empowered in a way by those voices of those who are regarded as Jewish, etc. So this was the intention. We discussed the history of Zionism and the history of the struggle against Zionism, which is as old as Zionism itself. But also the Jewish struggle against Zionism is as old as Zionism itself. But also we discussed practical measures about what is needed in order to abolish Zionism. And in our declaration, We have. It's quite a long declaration, a long kind of list of points that we make, which kind of goes through some of the needed events, needed measures in order to abolish Zionism. So, for example, we are calling on the UN to expel Israel from the General Assembly, as was done with South Africa in 1974 for its crime of apartheid. Israel is far more criminal than South Africa ever was. We are calling for a protection force from the UN to protect the people of Palestine. We are calling, obviously, for international organizations to sever ties with Israeli institutions. We're calling on civil society to stand by the BDS movement and adhere to the BDS guidelines, and so on. At the time of the Congress, it was when Israel attacked Iran. So we also called for sanctions on Israel because of its assault, its attack on Iran. And I would add also, we ask for supervision in order by the International Atomic Energy, what is it called? IAEA, I forgot the acronym, the name, to supervise the way forward in order to basically decommission Israeli nuclear weapons and nuclear weapons from across the region, and on and on. So there are different points. And maybe what's also important for me to mention about the declaration, the final points the last two paragraphs. In the last two paragraphs, we make it clear that Zionism does not represent Judaism or Jews in any way, shape, or form. And actually, it's claimed to represent Jews and treat Jews as a monolith and say that if one is Jewish, then therefore they are necessarily also Zionist. That in itself is the greatest form of anti-Semitism, the greatest form of racism and anti-Semitism. To say that just because of my Jewishness, whatever that means, I'm inherently, because of that, I'm also a Zionist and support that.
A Zionist, yes.
Yeah, it's basically like saying that all Muslims are terrorists. All Zionists are apartheid, genocide lovers. That's one thing that we had to make clear. Another thing that we wanted to say is that we are also calling on Israeli Jews, also Jews from around the world, to join us and to join the struggle for Palestine and for Palestinian rights, to reconsider their allegiance with Zionism. And this is the time to do that. If there was ever a time to reconsider where they stand on Zionism, this is the time to do so. And also to say that we want to stand kind of like shoulder to shoulder in this. It is a collective effort. It is not about, again, it's not about us Jews speaking in internal Jewish discourse. It's not a Jewish thing to stand by Palestinians. It's a human thing. We just have extra responsibility because we are those who are the privileged folks, those that the Zionist state claims to speak on our behalf. So we are actually expected to have a say and to have a very clear statement for the abolishment of Zionism.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, in my opinion, I think one of the most important things that you've done with that conference is give a home to anti-Zionist Jews. Because whereas you've had the religious anti-Zionists, who are, by the way, in occupied Palestine now. For example, in Ma'asharim, next to Jerusalem, if you'll go there, they'll tell you Zionists not welcome. If you're a Zionist, don't enter. That's why the Israeli Minister of National Security went there to cause provocation, and he was met with intense process, and his wife ended up slapping one of the protesters. So they have a group, though. So the Orthodox communities who oppose Zionism, whether it's Neturei Karta or others in the mainstream Orthodox Jewry in Israel, they have their community, they have their backing, they have their supporters. If you are a person who was born in a normal family or an average Zionist family, or you're abroad and you have these ties and people fall into the propaganda and the whole use of the victimhood and the Holocaust, it's a little bit more difficult for you. At least you have an address where you can be part of an organization with a group of people who, some of them wouldn't necessarily be religious, or like yourself, you put yourself out as a humanist first and for a humanitarian perspective, which is absolutely the right thing to do. And I think that's a very important thing, which leads us to this moment, Ronnie. All of what we're doing, online activism, videos, coverage, telling the truth, pushing, all of that is highly effective. It's very, very important. It's crucial. But the genocide is still going. You are one of the people who showed outright support for military intervention against Israel. Posted that when it was common on social media, after there was suppression, by the way, on social media. I, an Israeli dissident, support an immediate military intervention to stop the genocide taking place in the Gaza extermination camp. Tell us a little bit more about that and how it reflects your vision on how the solution can come to end the genocide and to establish one democratic state with equal rights between the Jordan River to the sea.
So I think that because the governments have failed so miserably to do anything about this genocide, this ongoing genocide, the first live stream genocide, also the first AI run. So, it's kind of, part of it is totally automated form of genocide, which is horrible to think about. And the governments are doing absolutely nothing about it. I have to say the governments other than two, possibly, Yemen, which is one of the poorest countries in the world, they have shown that they are standing and trying to do something to oppose this genocide. And more recently, Iran, that responded. Actually, it was acting, and it's without too much, without too much sympathy to the regime there, but they have shown that actually they are the only responsible adult in the room when you look at like the whole issue with the US and Israel and Iran, etc., where they have been attacked and they responded in a very measured way and targeted mostly military installations, etc. So, but let's ask, what are the other countries doing? I mean, even South Africa that took this to the ICC, etc. I mean, what are they doing? What boat was monitoring or accompanying the Medellin or the Handala, which were making their way to Gaza?
No one. No Arab country, no European country, no Africa, no one. They were going on their own, unprotected, when they were sailing in international waters.
Yes, and also more recently, Francesca Albanese, she was saying that actually it's the obligation of states to send in boats to enforce basically and to make sure that human rights are being, the rights of Palestinians in Gaza are being met, etc. So yes, I mean, none of that is happening. So it is definitely up to us. So first of all, the call for a military intervention, I think it's quite obvious. It's quite obvious when we understand the situation, when we understand that Israel is doing everything it does with full impunity and with the full support of the West. And this is also mentioned in our declaration of the Anti-Zionist Congress. We make it clear that Israel, first of all, if you want, I mean, I will just we mention kind of this list of crimes, which is not just genocide. I mean, sorry, I'll just go through this very quickly, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Ethnic cleansing, militarized apartheid, herbicide, scholasticide, medicide, mass starvation as an instrument of forced expulsion of more than 2 million Gazans, as well as an extant genocide of hundreds of thousands, one of the worst war crimes of our time. So, it's not, I cannot say just genocide, because genocide is the crime of crimes, but we have this monstrosity that is happening where every single state is obligated by law under even the Genocide Convention of 1974, obligated to oppose that. And still they don't even stop the association agreement with Israel. The EU, every single member state of the EU with no exception, is criminal. They are obligated not only under international law, but also under European law, because Article 2 of the agreement, of that association agreement, which basically is about the business ties and more than just business ties, any association with Israel. Article 2 of the agreement says that if there is a consistent human rights violation, which obviously there is, then the EU is obligated to seize the agreement. They're allowed to take corrective measures. They're allowed to sanction, for example. They're allowed to take other corrective measures. There's one thing that they are not allowed to do is to carry on with business as usual with Israel.
Mm-hmm.
But every single member state of the EU chooses to look the other way in order to protect Israel, to protect the criminals, and violate their own European law, let alone international law. So this is the level of politics that we have today. And obviously, you're in the UK, you know how criminal the UK government is. And how complicit it is in this ongoing genocide.
It's a participant, it's not just complicit, and
yes.
It doesn't matter what they do, they just try and whitewash their position. Like now, tying the position of, we will recognize a Palestinian state if there is no ceasefire by September. Oh, really?